so. It's already started.
Mm-hmm.
Taking an early morning nap up there?
Yeah, I got it.
Well, it's a little past 9:30. We'll call the meeting to order with everyone present and, Steve. First on the agenda, road matters. Go ahead, Lee.
We got our annual letter from the Laura Ingalls Wilder Park and Museum for their Laura Days, which is June 24th this year. It's a Saturday. They close 236th Avenue and 360th Street, and 361st Street gets kind of blocked off. They do it every year. We bring the barricades in, lay them out there for them. They put them up when they need them, and they take them down when they're done. And then we just go pick them up. So, but it does require action of the board to allow them to close those streets for their parade and their festivities. So I can leave this with you guys.
I would motion that we approve that closing of the streets.
You got 3 seconds
seconds.
today.
You take your choice.
Pick one.
We have a motion and second. Is there any further discussion? If none, all those in favor say aye. And
Believe it's just sent to
Go on
us.
to Ben.
I can let him know though. I mean, like I said, they do this
yeah,
every
it's
year.
not till June 24th.
Yeah. He knows they're eventually gonna do it, so. Bridge 317A, we talked about that last week. It's just off the River Road. It's an entrance bridge. They had us go out there and do some measurements. They had some ideas of what might be the problem with the structure. The measurements didn't back that up. And so they're going forward with some analysis of the issues they thought the bridge was having doesn't appear to be. It's still not going to rate well for the bridge. It's an old truss. The piling are very bad. And it's an entrance bridge. It goes to one home. And their preliminary guess is with all the repairs we do, it's only going to rate about 6 tons. You're not going to get an LP truck in there for 6 tons. So I'm not sure what the future of that bridge holds. If you want to actually go forward with repairs or you want to go forward with replacement. But that's going to be a discussion we're going to need to have. But until they say this is exactly what it is, I mean, where you don't really know for sure yet. But
Could be, is there other landowners there? Just the one or? is
there's
it-
one residence. I don't know if anyone else uses it for access to fields or
It could be kind of
woods or something.
like that one that you're already doing where you maybe
Right.
agree to fix it up and then sell them the bridge so that you don't have to worry about it.
It's an option. But again, if you sell it, the flood issue becomes their problem and they just need to know that.
How big a span? You know?
I think it's 54 feet. Don't quote me on that. It's not a small bridge. So I don't believe it needs to be that large. We haven't run hard hydraulics on it. But again, I don't think a box culvert is going to take it. You're going to have a span of some sort. So we'll see how that goes as you go forward. 175th Street, Kroll was planning to start paving today. Obviously with the rain, that's going to slow them up a little bit. They may be going this afternoon. But the mainline paving is expected to start. So, and that's the big thing. Again, as we talked about last week, this new cement that we're being required to use, we're not seeing strengths like we used to. When we did pour the caps and such on Bridge 237, we were barely getting strength over 7 days. It's not there, and that's not what we want to see. DOT is talking about changing the spec from 500 PSI down to 350 PSI, and then you can load the slab in little hesitant about that till they actually put the spec out there. But it's been discussed by the contractor to try to do that. That gets people on it faster, but you're exposing the slab to loading. And, I don't know if that's what we want to do until the spec is truly out there. Minnesota has been doing it. The theory behind it is you load it when it's a little green, it forces. And that's what you want to do is force those cracks. If it doesn't crack where you want it to, it's gonna crack where it wants to, and that's not what you want. So, but the only thing you can guarantee concrete will do is crack. Yeah, with that new cement, we can't get away from it. I mean,
They were poised when I went by there this morning, like they were just about ready to start.
hopefully they will be. That rain, I know it did slow them up a little bit, but, that's a slow run. If they did a day or a mile in a day, that is a long pull for that type of paving, a very long pull. So, it'll be slow and we'll just see how it goes, but
How many miles is that road?
just under 4, not quite 4 miles. When you get into, especially our, a lot of driveways, a lot of access issues, and you know, it's really gonna slow things down when you get to the city, but that's the nature of how things work, so can't avoid it. Still working on the deck. Hopefully we'll see that poured on Bridge 237. We're trying to get an idea from K Construction on when they want to start 317. Because we don't have an agreement with that landowner yet, and he wanted to wait till the pre-con to find out how that was gonna go. And we're trying to get Canospi to give us a pre-con for the landowner won't agree.
One I just referenced.
Yeah, on the dead end on Grand Valley. So, see how that goes. He's still working. 14, he's got one footing in, he's working on the downstream, curtain wall, and then he's forming up the barrel, so. And normally he's pretty fast to pour, and he shouldn't be there too much longer. Box culverts are his thing, and he's his. But other than that, the blades will be out today. We got rain. It rains, it's fit to blade. And, the guys are still trying to haul dirt around those other boxes that we did last fall and get them sloped out, and so we can get them behind us. And I see that talking with Beth and Dan this morning, the locates are coming in like crazy, so we're gonna be starting to do a lot of digging and with pipe and other things, so. Not a lot for you.
Is there much more fuel that's gotta go down here next October on 14? That's up for,
I can't tell you how much they still need, but
that's looking forward to a lot of.
it's a big box.
Well, it's a big slope.
Yeah, and I mean, we try to do this as best we can, is to get those slopes out as much as you can. Sometimes it works great, sometimes it does not. Like crazy, but when you have to buy right away, you start opening up all the cans of worms with endangered species and, archaeology and all that other stuff, so we try to stay in as best we can. So, I'm gonna leave it with you before I forget. So like I said, not a lot.
The road department cleared the site in Ocean for the 911 tower. They did that last Monday, Tuesday-ish.
Yeah.
So that's done, cleared up. Did a good job. Does anyone have anything else for Lee?
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
I guess it could have been later.
Oh, no. Don't start there.
Go back up, come down.
Yeah, there you go.
Early stairs.
What do you have for consent agenda?
You got the minutes, the claims, and the county recorder's monthly report.
I move to approve the consent agenda. I'll second that.
We have a motion and second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? If none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimous. Some time, are there any committee reports?
I just hit something.
The,
Ben,
Judicial district,
Ben, why did this go to this?
the judicial district hired a new director who was the assistant before. Moving ahead.
That meeting that I saw last week, on Thursday, looks like the juvenile detention got a whole bunch of some funding for apprenticeships. Like for about 100 or more.
I couldn't log on to that meeting.
Oh, okay.
They wouldn't let me in, so I missed that.
Yeah, I noticed there was quite a few apprenticeship opportunities that were gonna go through the juvenile detention. And the only other ones I saw local was, Novak Electric got 4 or 5. So that was the only local ones that came in the juvenile detention.
Good. Yeah, that juvenile detention does a lot of good work. You know, I mean, New Brownstone Center.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be a big plus.
I met with John Halverson this morning and we're gonna try to start up with Mark and Andy and John and probably Tony, trying to get some movement on thinking about the courtroom renovation, historic renovation, see if we can start getting some things moving towards applying for grants and seeing about that. That third floor.
You know how many grants that are available?
Well, I'm sure we're kind of past the first part of the season, but before we get into the next piece, we want to go for some of that historic restoration monies that are still out there. So,
The state has one, it's 50,000.
yeah,
That we, would be hard for us not to qualify for that one. That was one that was a backup plan if we didn't get that national one that we did the roof with, that was 115 or whatever it was. Then we were gonna go for that other one. Since we didn't get that other, we got the national one for the roof, so we could still get the 50 probably for the inside work. But 50 doesn't go a long way on, when you're doing major remodeling, so.
Who would be the one to submit that grant? Who writes the grants?
Well, last time we had,
Bethany.
Priest, Laura Priest in coordination with Bethany submitted it. Maybe Bethany's fine doing it on her own, I don't know, but Laura kind of helped put the polish on it because that was her expertise. I mean, Bethany, I'm sure would have the information we needed, and so.
I put a bug in Bethany's ear earlier this year about wanting to get some things happening.
Yeah, so I think I was on that email string and I think she said something like we could get that she could take the previous application that we submitted for the national one and basically just update it and get it ready for the state one. So that would be, and then if there are other big grants available, I don't know. But
Yeah, now it's time we just have to start looking for one.
Who do we talk to about other grants that would be like historic preservation and flora here, historical society and?
We'll just keep nosing around. I think Steve Johnson will task him with also keeping his ear to the ground.
yeah. But Laura was always good for that, so I don't know if Stephanie from that does any of that, or she gets a new person if they'll be willing to help with that kind
I
of.
think Laura will still, she leans that way, of course, as a Winneshiek County resident.
Right.
I think that's still within our scope.
Are we all planning on the tour on Monday? At Spectrum?
Next Monday.
Is everybody attending? Well, they're doing a luncheon, so they need to know kind of a head count, if you're gonna go or not. Yes, yeah, yes, you don't know yet, Dan,
I'm looking.
Mark,
I should be able to.
yeah, I
got nothing. Don't know what anyone.
Yeah, that should work.
Really to ask me if I would give a in-depth review and plain English of the property tax bill that passed.
Oh,
It ended up passing both chambers, and I don't feel comfortable doing that yet. I mean, I've read the bill, but there is a working group with county auditors, county assessors that's gonna be doing that for everybody. So they're gonna go through it and put it out in, more bullet points, here's this, here's this, here's this. What I've read is basically it's gonna be similarly to what we already have seen, that they're gonna restrict your growth each year, and then if your growth is higher than what the restriction is, you use the difference to help lower your levy rate. It looked to me like there's a 5-year time where you gotta get your levy rate back down to the 350 is the way I read that. So I don't quote me on that until we see this working group information, but if your growth was between 3% and 6%, if your growth was over 6%, then you could get 3% of it. That's the way I read that.
Mhm.
And so we will be restricted the next several years, and at some point even more restricted. So and that's kind of what I know about it. The bill did include several other of the ISAC objectives that weren't directly related to property tax authority. So the county assessor, county treasurer, county quarter, I think, well, anyway, they had bills to increase some fees and restructure some things that they tacked on at the end of this bill. So those were some good things in the benefits of the bill, because they had a vehicle to get those other objectives. And worse based on some of those other bills we saw, but it's still not perfect for us. It takes away it takes away a lot of your authority to make a decision, because they're just saying this is your cap, so. I can't remember, there was it was the dirty 30 was the phrase that people were using for about the 30 counties out that were over $3.50 in their general fund. So just so you know, you're one of the dirty 30 out there. So that was the phrase that was going around at the State House. Not good. No. And another part of that is that this was, when I talked to one of the legislators, not actually ours, but a neighboring one, she kept referring to this as phase 1. This was phase 1 of the property tax reform. So there will probably be more next year.
have we done an analysis of what our labor costs kind of locked into going forward are,
I haven't gotten that.
and then where our
Yeah,
ability to raise and restrictions and where that kind of crosses.
It's gonna- yeah, right.
Kind of layoffs.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately,
somewhere, yeah.
there's gonna have to be layoffs. And that would be potentially with other elected officials as well as us that have to start laying off people. So I think as soon as we can get the details, we should look at, okay, what 1, 2, 3 years out, where is that cross? Because it's not
Right.
going away for 5 years, so.
Right. Then at some point it may be, because we won't know our labor costs, because it's gonna be based on those annually when we look at the reports, but at some point it might be, if we give the full raises, then we're gonna have to lay one person off, whereas if we don't, then we can afford,
And that would be nice to know a year ahead of time, at least, or 2 years ahead of
But I
time.
don't know how you know that, because.
Because you don't know what that rate's gonna be.
October is when the next year's raises on, so
Yeah, you don't know till then what it is.
Well, but
we can guess.
we kind of have a pretty good guess about what our COLA we've anticipated is and people's age and through attrition. I mean, you can somewhat deal with that.
Yeah,
rather
that's
than
true.
having to-
Whenever you have a longtime employee retired or replaced with a new one, then you cut expense there.
So I mean, I think we should look at that
Mhm.
to be proactive rather than having to make some hard mid-stream cuts.
In
And I
January.
don't know if that's, we do that internally or there again, it's somebody else to make an analysis of based on.
Ben's,
Now, I'll be, I don't. I agree, it would be good if you could know ahead of time, but I will have to think about ways we could try to calculate that. I mean, you can take your total payroll. Your total payroll for the last calendar year was about 8 million. And so you can look at
Get
it,
a 5% raise, that's 400,000,
yeah,
plus your 35% of your FICA and acres, so we were just short of $600,000 this year. That's what the raise was.
and you'll have next year, your collective bargaining agreement is still set at 2 3/4.
Steve. Steve,
Steve,
you might as well just take the chair. We got,
It'll be
Yeah.
short, a few minutes, but
we got
yeah,
a few minutes, but you might as well just sit down. I'm gonna use.
I am working on compiling the budget amendment figures. Later in this agenda, I'm gonna ask you to set the time and date for it, which will be at the end of this month. And then by next Monday, I'll have a complete listing of all the requests from the departments. There aren't a lot, so it should be pretty straightforward, but I'll go through that in detail then next Monday. About who's requesting how much, which departments are requesting how much. So.
Kind of looking at the project out here with the steps
Yes,
and Wick's bid. Is that a total bid of what their part of it was?
30,000.
30,000
I
something,
think so, yeah.
they didn't come. And then the
They didn't
railing,
come, they didn't ask for any change order or anything, but
and then the railing is in addition to that, or?
I think they were bidding as a general and then they would sub that out because they don't do metal
yeah,
work.
that's,
It is,
John said it's proceeding.
Yeah.
That subcontractor is working between dealing with all the farming needs of today and welding and
Yeah.
doing the railing. So he's been kind of back and forth going to John. And then John did mention that, a tree service guy got in here and took care of those. That one big widowmaker that was up on top of that tree broken over and did a bunch of tree trimming in there, which is really good and needed.
talked about the settling of the concrete or is that gonna be ground down?
He's contacted, about mud jacking up that spot, plus another one on the other side. Didn't have a trip.
Yeah, to get them even, yeah.
Yeah, I think the mud jacking is a good way to go with a lot of these issues. And I don't know, if they're gonna do that, is there places like at the Smith Building or someplace else that we need to, they're gonna be in town doing?
You know, do we have any major spots down there? Do you know what?
I know if I don't. Yeah, he said nothing.
We've actually used that on some roads too, where we've had them come in and try to lift up the settled parts. And it's been fairly successful, I think, too, so.
Yeah, I know a lot of bridge approaches.
Yeah, that's,
Or maybe
especially when you put in a new bridge.
the bridge.
The bridge is set and the new approach then settles over time, so you get this like this as you go over it. So. That went out at Madison Road past the Madison Church. That was really bad when they first put that one in. Like 2 years later, you about went off the road when you went over that one.
Hmm.
But if they mud jacked it, it's fine now.
I was scheduled for a Wellington meeting last Thursday, but that meeting got canceled for lack of a quorum, so we're off to next month for the next one there.
Or FYI, there is, solid waste does have some grant money for community cleanups. That I think there's a deadline coming up on the 21st or something for for the application on that. Port, I know, is taking advantage of that. They're doing a community-wide cleanup down there within a week or so. And so I think, I don't know, I think not all of it's been, committed. Of course, they haven't had a meeting to award it, but there's more time still
Yeah.
to apply for it, for, I don't know, auction or custody or.
Don't believe well, take that back. We may have
I think you did one
applied for
time.
that in the past.
To see walk on just did one.
It's helpful.
Not
The last flooding event we had, it was, they would accept appliances. We had them staged out at the recycling center, just to accept appliances that had been damaged by the flood. Dusty telephone showed up out there that had been damaged by the flood.
Sat on the basement floor.
Yeah. But, so I had that cleaned up quite a few that time.
Yeah, I don't believe we've applied for it for a couple of years because when we have those cleanups, there's a appliance recycler that comes in and takes all of those appliances and then recycles them at basically no cost to us. So that's a win.
If you know who that is, let me know.
Yeah.
Because I know that there's a bunch, that was a big issue that came up at Spillville recently. At the city council meeting.
And recycling will take some types of appliances. It depends on what depends on what it is. I mean, obviously the ones that are televisions and those they won't take, but I think they take like a blender or toaster, those kind of things that are pretty smaller and don't have bad chemicals or things in them.
And there's a site, WinneshiekWaste.com, I believe it is, that you can see what's accepted.
All right, it's 10 o'clock. Next on the agenda, Steve Johnson, the Winneshiek County Historical Preservation Commission with a proclamation of Historic Preservation Month.
I have a copy. Oh, you got a copy to read or something, yeah.
Yeah, I gave you a couple copies
Yeah.
earlier last week, so you could look at in advance, but we do this every year via his National Historic Preservation Month. And it's through the National Trust for Historic Preservation, so we participate in that program, and that's why we'd like the supervisors to sign and endorse the proclamation for May. And we're gonna, if we can, just do a really quick photo op it, of the supervisors, the members here that couldn't make it from our commission.
I'd move to approve the May for proclamation of historical preservation month.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to proclaim May proclamation of Historic Preservation Month. Is there any future discussion? Future,
Or current.
further discussion, or future, or current? If not, all those in favor say aye.
I'll pass around 2 copies so that we'll have one to keep and then we can send us or give a signed one to Steve as well.
Well, I was wondering if we could just do a very quick, I think last year we just had everybody stand,
The end of the
facing-
table?
Yeah, as a group, and if we could do that again this year. We have the press here, plus I'm having someone take a photo for you too.
Centered between the flags.
Sure.
Okay.
Sounds good, and then I think our commission will consider. And.
Light coming through.
Backs over there.
I don't know how the auditors want it to be done, but.
You don't want Dan sitting in his chair like you see the governor, the president signing something and everyone's over him.
When I have Dan, don't you, and I was like, oh, that's here, because we're passing it back and forth or something, or going to the project. So it's not to block anybody's view.
Next to him. There you go. Now can you get us all in? Who's tall? You're
So everybody in the front row take one or two steps over to their right. And then we can get another person in the front row.
And then step over.
Yeah, there we go.
There.
That was.
Now, can you still see him?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right, here we go.
Okay.
In 3, 2, 1. And one more in 3, 2, 1.
Stay there. We'll take one more. Awesome. Excellent. Thank you.
All done?
All right, thank you. Oh, thank you.
There's two copies.
You got nothing, no, I think so. Oh, yeah, yeah. I think so.
Oh, we all
Signing
signed.
two of them. Okay.
Take care.
Yeah, well, thank you all.
Steve, we're just discussing the restoration of the county courthouse. I mean, courtroom,
Yeah,
and, we're gonna be looking to apply for grants for that. And Ben was talking about there was still a potential state one.
The state 50,000, the state, I remember what it's called.
it's not historic, right?
It's a historic.
HRDP,
Yes, that one.
that's like a May 1st deadline.
Yeah, we're probably looking at next.
Oh,
next
yeah,
year.
well, that certainly would be, and we can check with some other of our consultants in the area, see if there are any others that would match
Yeah,
up with
That's
that.
exactly why.
Yeah, we were wondering.
So I'll put the
What
word
is
out.
out there that we
Yeah.
should be looking at, and then if it is a year from now, let's find either volunteers or somebody to help write this.
Because some of them are 50/50 match, some are 40/60. I mean, it varies, but.
But I mean, we're probably gonna spend way more than the 50% anyway, so we might as well get as much help as we can.
Well, yeah, if you can get a 50/50 grant,
Mm-hmm.
you can pay the cost half of it.
Could look into that. That would
Yeah,
be
we,
great.
I'll look into it and get back to Ben.
Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be fantastic.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
Oh, do you wanna wait, Steve? We'll give you,
Oh.
who signs, who didn't sign that yet? We'll give you a copy so you can have an official signed one too.
Okay.
In case you wanna, frame it and put it up somewhere.
And I just talked with a representative from the Preservation Office just before this meeting, and we're looking at over to do a workshop, one-day workshop on COGs from North. As more details come out, I'll keep you fully informed.
And if you ever needed a meeting room for that, we can make, if this one is work, it'd be available.
Okay, well, thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
And I can put you to work first.
I don't wanna mark Steve absent if we see him up there, so I wanna make sure that, when we take our next vote, we need to know whether he's here or not, because I have to record whether he was here to vote or not. So if you see him sign on, let me know. I'm trying to watch it.
Is there ever consideration of replacing those windows with more soundproof?
I'm sure it wasn't ever considered no, but yeah, that would be nice.
I mean, it really is. Those are the two that cause most of the issue.
And they're probably just older anyway,
It would be-
more efficient and more.
Interesting to look into the price of what that would cost, I think. His asset.
You have, if you did, I mean, you would wonder if you do all this in here when you do it. There's only 5 windows, so it didn't be, there's one in the one bathroom, but
Yeah. This one's not so bad because it's kind of protected, but these two are the ones that really,
It's good.
Who's gonna sign on the form?
who would want to look into that?
It's the-
Alverson, but I can,
5404.
yeah, or have him totally do some.
Steve,
Tony
can you
ends up
hear us
doing
okay?
some of that stuff when
Why don't you have a look into it? I think it'd be worth it. It's really disruptive to meetings.
It's not muted.
You know,
Yes, I'm present on the phone.
Okay, great.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, Brenda. Might as well grab a chair. You're next up. You gotta wait a couple more minutes though.
Steve is joining by phone.
Oh, okay.
He's
Glad we didn't get that hail like Southwest.
Where did they get that the baseball side, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 2 2 3/4 inches. They picked them out of the inside of the car, so they went through the windows.
Where was that?
I didn't catch it
I didn't
exactly.
catch it, yeah, I just heard about it, but
But it was in Iowa here,
Yeah.
so I don't know if Iowa somewhere.
then they had quarter size too someplace.
That's good.
It's 10:10. Next on the agenda, Brenda Kreitzer, County Treasurer, Property Tax Suspension.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, I have a customer, it's Gary and Jennifer Munt. And they do qualify for getting their taxes suspended. To get the taxes suspended by, the Human Services has to actually approve it, saying that they either get SSI or they are, in a care facility and that is being paid for. And their application was approved for the facility care by them, so they do qualify. And so I just need to have it okayed by the board that their taxes are suspended. And then what happens when they're suspended? I check on it once a year just to make sure that they still are suspended, and they don't have to be, as long as they are, they don't have to be paid back until the property is sold or they're deceased. But they pay it back without penalty.
So, but it still gets paid, but.
It still gets paid. It's just that they don't have to pay until normally it's when the property gets sold. Without penalty.
I'd move to approve the suspension.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second to approve the property tax suspension. Is there any further discussion? If none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Treasurer's office?
We're busy. So,
Is this the end of the tax?
I'm starting to work on tax sale. So we'll have our tax sale next month.
That, now this time it's all online, is that?
This time we will be doing the tax sale. The bidding part of it will all be done online, yeah. Almost every county is. So, it does make it a lot cleaner and less work up there because I don't have to register all the bidders. That is done by the third party, and the third party also runs the sale that day. So
It's a 1-day sale.
it's a 1-day sale and it doesn't cost us anything to do it online. So, it's actually, I shouldn't say 1 day, it'll be between 9 and 10, and ours is usually small enough where we'll be done by 9:20. So, which is good.
And so just so everyone realizes when they sell it, they're buying in, the bidder is paying the property tax in exchange for interest in the property. That isn't even, they don't get interest right away. They get interest that they can convert the certificate into a deed
After a year,
Later.
9 months. It has to be at least a year.
year, 9 months and up to 3 years, actually.
Right, and the investors, they don't do this to get the property, they do it for the interest, which is 24%, and that's why they do it.
It's a simple 2% per month interest rate. And so they do it to try to make money, but people who buy it only pay the amount of the taxes due. And so we aren't like selling it for more or something. We only get to collect what's due to the county, and what the bidders bid is they bid down the percentage of interest in the property they're willing to take if it never gets paid.
That's why they don't want it for the deed, they just want it for the interest.
Interest.
And then September comes and the taxes are still not paid. We have to wait 45 days, and if the taxes are still not paid by the owner, then the investor can add that on to the tax sale. And so that's kind of, the investor can keep adding that on until it's either redeemed by the owner, or if it's not redeemed, then the investor.
Usually what happens is the person gets so far behind that if they can't pay it, when it comes time to sell it, either the bank that owns their security on the property or the money from the proceeds of the sale will go to pay it off. That's usually what happens. It's like, you're either gonna lose the property or you should get it paid off. So then they figure out what's gonna.
If we have one that goes to deed, it's either house that should be torn down, nobody cares about anyway, or it is something that's landlocked. You know, it's usually not anything that's worth anything if it does go to deed.
What's the time frame on that before they?
A year, 9 months from tax sale, the investor can't touch the property for a year, 9 months, but then there's a window of a year, 9 months to 3 years where the investor can start that. Normally, the investor will wait closer to the 3 years because they're just in it for the interest. They're not in it for the property.
Oh, just
So,
run it to the end.
yep.
Then if the person has to sell it to clear it, then they get more interest. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Right,
Thank you
very
very
much.
Oh, there's a little.
10:15, next miscellaneous. First of all, we have to set a public hearing. The FY 23 budget amendment.
yeah, so I didn't schedule much time for these because it's pretty straightforward. So the budget amendment, which I'll bring all the details of what the departments are requesting next week, but we need to get the date and time set. So 9:30 on May 30th is the time I'm recommending. If you usually need to get your budget amendment done in May. The county can amend the budget in June, but if someone protests the amendment, it automatically fails. So you don't want to push it into June except in an emergency. One year when we had the flood in 2008, I think that was when that was, when we had the flood in June, we did do a budget amendment in June. And luckily no one protested it, but we had some major repairs to make, but otherwise we'd always do it in May so that we could fight protest if one gets filed. It's usually non-controversial items anyway, but I'll bring those all next week. A lot of times they get a grant, they can't spend it till they have added it to their expense part of their budget. So a lot of times there's offsetting revenues and those kinds of things, so.
And the reason Ben said Tuesday, the 30th is Memorial Day. We don't.
Oh, yes, Monday, there's no meeting that Monday, so.
Someone want to make a motion?
I would motion that we set the hearing for budget amendment for May 30th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to set the FY 23 budget amendment for May 30th at 9:30 in the morning.
And it is a resolution.
I,
Shirley?
Aye.
Aye.
Steve? Still on, Steve?
Looks like he's.
Just a
Get
second.
muted.
Got muted just a minute. He's raising his hand.
He's raising his hand.
Yeah.
A second. Steve, I can't control the mute. I'm sorry. I thought it won't let me unmute you, so you're raising your hand. Can you say in the chat? Would that work? Can you go to chat and say aye or nay?
There's something you have to push, and I don't remember what it is, like star this or something.
him?
For him to push on
I
the
have no
phone to
idea.
unmute it or mute it.
Raising.
He wasn't muted though. That
He
happened.
was on.
I know.
I would say raising his hand would qualify, wouldn't
It would, I think. There you go.
There you go. And what did you vote on that?
That
The
was a
public
yes
hearing.
vote on the,
it? Okay, great, thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
motion carries unanimous. Next up.
The other, the other quick thing I have is the contract with Hacker Nelson. So they do a 3-year contract and it's up again this year. We haven't bid it out recently, but there was a survey that went around amongst the county auditors of what other counties pay, and we're actually on the low end anyway. The counties that pay the state auditor's office pay half again or double what we do. So I wouldn't recommend going to that, but, we really enjoy working with Hacker Nelson because down the street. So when they need something else, we can run it down. If it isn't something, we can send electronically. So, I didn't go out. I didn't say we should go out for bids. We could do that, but my recommendation would be just to sign with them again for another 3 years.
I'd move to approve the Hacker Nelson contract.
I'll second
Second.
that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the contract with Hacker Nelson for 3 years. Is there any further discussion? If none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
aye,
Opposed, same sign, motion carries unanimous. Next up on the agenda, Mark Foley, consider outside financial consultant for IRVM analysis. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I asked to have this put on the agenda, I guess because several people have suggested that maybe we should have somebody actually go through, outside person or a firm, go through and analyze the numbers for the IRVM program. And I think also with the, obviously, retirement of one employee and another one at the end of the summer, is there a way, if really the main charge that since most of our equipment is bought and the sheds are purchased and whatever, is mainly the main cost, just that one additional employee, and could that employee be integrated into the road maintenance department, or the road department since one of them is an employee anyway? Is this a great time to just say, let's commit to doing this if the numbers say that we're gonna be saving money in the long run if we really commit to this program? And I think it would be a win-win situation. There's money. I talked with Ben. He thinks there's money that's been set aside that we could use that wouldn't come out of the road departments.
I usually budget $10,000 in a miscellaneous expense line in the non-departmental budget just for this kind of surprise thing. So I'm not suggesting you need to spend $10,000 on this
No.
analysis, but I'm saying there's money there if you wanted to hire someone to do it.
And it shouldn't, I don't know how much it would cost, but I mean, I don't think it would be $10,000, but there are potentially somebody who would want to volunteer to do it, or we would hire somebody to do it. But I think it's a great way of getting the numbers in front of us so we can make an informed decision about this program, because from what I see, it seems like the big stumbling block is the additional employee we had managing the program. But if they were part of the, going back to, they were just part of our number of people we have on the road department, we're gonna be doing that work anyway. We have to mow, spray, cut. Looking at the pictures that people have submitted of, I mean, the program before wasn't working when you've got 30-year-old trees growing up out of the road ditch and a massive clearing going on. We weren't keeping up anyway, so I think this would be a great compromise of putting the program back in place, utilizing the funds that we can get through grants and resources. For sure, not saying we hope we can get those because we have a program with that. And like I said, we've got 2 retirements, so one now and one coming in the summer would be a great time.
Yeah, I get your point, Mark. Maybe we should just hold off till we have a new hire in the engineer department and,
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I just.
But I
just
think
to see
it would be
which
great.
direction they want to go, whoever is hired.
Well, I think it would be great to have that information for the new person so they can make a decision without having to jump into this very contentious discussion we're having. I think it'd be great just to get the numbers out in front of us and then we can all say, okay, is the needle going backwards or forwards as far as the amount of savings we're having? Granted, by Lee's estimate, over 5 years, we've saved $13,000. I mean, but that's just getting into where we've got the tractor, we've got the sheds, we've got the whatever. I think it would be well informed for all of us to be able to step back and have somebody do the analysis of it.
And just looking at it from the outside, and that's one of the main disagreements among the factions of it is it a savings or is it a cost or what? And that seems to be, and if you hire an outside third party, then you should hopefully get an objective. I would not recommend when he's mentioned a volunteer. I don't know that
No.
a volunteer is going to be objective. So
No.
whether you hire Hacker Nelson, which is going to be more expensive, but they're going to give you a completely objective
Yeah.
decision. And maybe even can ask the person to present it in different ways. Can we say, if we're managing it with just the engineer managing it versus if we hire a person to manage it versus if we kind of leave it in this limbo of we have a program that we aren't completely managing, what do those 3 options cost?
Yeah, and I spoke with Amanda this week and just questioned her a little bit.
Amanda, just so everyone knows.
Amanda Webb from Hacker Nelson.
There you go.
This week and just asked her in what depth that
Yeah.
do they go into the department, and they don't go anywhere close to that. But
So we have to have.
she
somebody
did
to look.
acknowledge that it's a possibility of doing that. They basically go in and look at all the grant money, make sure that's all where it's supposed to be and other figures, but like I said, without getting into each department, they don't go that far.
They go
Just-
to questions of other counties,
I would,
data.
so I mean,
What they do at this level is to make sure that the money is getting spent appropriately.
Yes.
So if you're gonna ask them to do the in-depth analysis, I mean, just based on this contract, the principal accountant, you're paying $240 an hour, and then the other people, whether it's professional staff or manager, range from $105 to $160 an hour also. So, and then how much time, and that's what you would do a bid or a estimate to go for proposals from people to see what it might take.
and maybe this isn't what Hacker Nelson wants to do, but we could find somebody else, another firm that would want to take this project done.
Well, I'd be open to looking at estimates if somebody
Yeah.
wants to.
They can look at an estimate, I ain't gonna guarantee. Yeah.
So maybe I can work with Andy to see how we could structure since he's here, and we'll make sure he's listening, how we could structure a request for proposals from accounting firms, basically, to do that.
And
You
the-
follow
Because
along
I
with that.
also, my concern is if there's a lot.
And analyze the integrated roadside vegetation management program. Look at, if we're having a director and how much it costs and cost benefit of that versus expecting the engineer to do it, and cost benefit for that, and expecting it to be kind of we have a program without a unmanaged program within that program specifically. And it would be something you could ask your engineer to do, which you have, but some of the participants want more information yet and we don't have an engineer right now, and a new engineer doesn't know the whole story, so that's why we might need to go to a third party.
And two things in that request for proposals that I'd want to see addressed are, these are all the startup costs that we're dealing with right now, that was all known in the program. There'd be upfront costs with long-term gain. And the long-term gain would be an estimate going into the future based on other counties' experience.
I think that might be an intangible figure to come up with.
Well, it's best guess of practice. I mean, if you have counties that are showing an increase, basically doing the same type of program that have been into it longer, you would make based on that. The other concern I guess I would have is that who's going to file all of the paperwork that needs to be done with the DNR and the state? I mean,
They're doing it for how many years?
Well, who's doing
I
it?
think
We've been in it since 1995 in the program.
I mean, it's
It
takes somebody's
It was
time,
doing that.
but it takes somebody's time, and if we're taking somebody away,
The staff does it.
Sorry, Steve?
I said the staff is the one that's completing all the paperwork. It's not being individually done, I believe, by one individual. It's coming together from Dana and Bev and the rest of that aspect of it. That's part of the normal, I think that's part of their normal routine.
No, Dana and Beth do not fill out the chemical reports, the spray reports for the chemicals we're using and the conditions of the weather that day and what noxious weed it was sprayed on and what section of road was sprayed. And I don't believe Jeff is going to be doing that, and I don't believe Todd is equipped to do that. So the question is, who in the road crew will be doing those reports?
Ultimately upon.
That probably only can be answered by the engineer that we're going to hire.
but I think it would be better if we had information ahead of time for them to be able to make a good decision by doing this study.
Well, we'll get some estimates or whoever you want to take charge of that, Mark.
Mark and myself and Andy can work on how we would get bids. I mean, maybe it's unrealistic. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
you'll get a proposal that's tens of thousands that you think
Yeah.
is not worth it, but maybe if it's a couple thousand, it's worth it. You'll have to decide once you see the numbers. I think that's where you
I
really.
think once somebody would say, well, what information is already readily available without having to dig too deeply and then make an assessment of that. Do we need a motion on that, or is it just?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Well, next on the agenda, right on schedule here, 10:30. We'll open the bids for the farm lease, approximately 10 acres on East Ridge Road.
So I have them here. So if you want to open them, do we open the bids and then open a public hearing, or should we open the public hearing and then open the bids as part of it, or? I had a procedural question, that's why I asked Andy to make sure he was here for this part.
I would open the bids so they could have something to discuss at the public.
Okay.
What did he say?
He said to open the bids and open the public hearing.
It should be attached to that. Whatever this is.
Guess that's just an address.
Yeah, yeah.
They've won that third.
I think it's two separate bids, actually, that third one is, isn't it? What's three bid?
No, it's just a
Oh, it's a blank one. That's a blank one.
blank one, the
And
map,
map,
and
public notice, yeah,
Yeah.
so we can put those together.
there's bid for the 3-year at $2,100. Here would be two of them. For $3,333.
What's that one?
3,333 3-year lease. Then we got the last one, it would be for the 11-year lease. The base line bid is $20 less than the CRP rate acre. However, there's a higher bid for then the bid is $10 per acre higher than the highest bid submitted. Well,
Do we know the base CRP rate of this?
$240 an acre. So this year would be roughly 30. This year's roughly $333 or $330 an acre roughly. The one would be,
And the other one would be.
I mean, I don't know how you can
$3,600.
bid in like that. I mean,
No, it's, so we'll have Andy. So now we have the numbers.
it's $20 less. Her bid is really $220 an acre. And we got another one here at $333 for the 3-year. 333
For a total of the 3 years.
for the total of 3 years. $3,333
Per year.
per year for
3 years.
3 years.
That's
That's
just
the
under
3 year.
$10,000.
Yeah. Then this here bid is $20 less than the CRP rate. But then she's $10 an acre higher than the highest bid. Well,
That's like having two bids.
yeah, I mean, how,
Can you please read the whole bid, Mark?
the baseline,
Exactly.
the baseline bid is $20 less than the CRP rate per acre. However, if there is a higher bids for either the 3 or the 11-year lease, then the bid is $10 per acre higher than the highest bid submitted, up to a maximum of $360 per acre. But not more than $120 higher than the CRP rate.
Can you accept bids that are variable? Because that kind of,
I mean,
Dan said that's essentially it's two bids,
yeah,
so,
which,
you know, you probably should open the hearing and have your discussion. I don't see a reason why you could not
take the highest
take the highest bid.
bid there.
Which would be around $3,600.
340 an acre,
Well, maybe we should open the public hearing.
yeah.
I move to open the public hearing.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and second to open the public hearing on the farm lease. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Public hearing is now open.
So it sounds like it's feasible to accept both of the bids there, according to Andy.
If we accept the highest bid on the sheet.
So if it's 340. Sounds like,
It's roughly $320 an acre. The one bid would be the
The highest.
$3,333,
Yeah.
roughly 320 an acre. So we'd have to,
That's the higher of the 2 3-year bids.
that's the higher of the 2
Three.
3 year.
The lower one gets,
Roughly 320,
Okay.
roughly, give or take.
Is the higher of the 2
Because
3.
320 at 10.37 is 33.1840.
Mhm.
So I mean, it's,
maybe we should acknowledge who's bidding.
I would,
No,
don't really have to.
okay.
And
I just thought maybe we had
Then a
to.
$10 bid higher than the highest bid would be $330 an acre for the 11-year lease.
I'm nothing against the Jody's bid, but I'm curious how you resolve a variable bid. I mean, that's
what I
that's
was.
a part
Yeah.
of the issue. I
I
mean,
think it was all cleared legally, otherwise it, I mean,
that's why I'm asking Andy, because we have many times
Don't wanna
take
get-
bids, and the whole point is that you take the highest bid, and if it's in, that's part of
You
it.
have the opportunity to take 2 bids from the same person, and that's essentially what you have here are 2 bids.
mhm.
One is obviously going to fail because of
Too low.
Too low.
and the other one is still alive because it's,
I'm like, if we do a road project and we have two bids. If we decline both of them, those bids are secret because you can't, I mean, until it's accepted, it's a secret bid. So how can someone replace a bid that says it's gonna be, if you have 2 people that both bid, we want to be higher than the highest bid, well, how do you even, I don't know how you do a variable bid. That's why I'm confused about procedure.
Jordy?
I think the saving grace on this might be the fact that it also says not to exceed the 120 over the CRP. I mean, you have
On that.
an actual basis upon which to
That's true.
to
Which is-
calculate the bid.
which is 360 would be.
360, yeah.
Jordy, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to highlight that this bid that I made was provoked by the need to submit a blind bid in a sense without knowing the CRP rate. And so I recognize that no one else in the 3-year was under that situation. Anyone who bid that in the 11, who was making a bid in the 11-year was under the same condition where they had to submit a bid without knowing what the CRP rate was. And so that's exactly why it's structured the way it is, which I viewed as one bid with the information that you know that I don't. And so that, yeah, that's,
I guess
I have to explain that in the preamble to the bid, but it was provoked by that need. And it is very much a calculatable exact number with the information that you have. I couldn't do that with the information.
I acknowledge all that. I just want to make sure that if we're accepting a variable bid, that we have everyone on board.
It was also developed with the consult of an attorney there, that because I was left in the dilemma that I had. And so I did the best that I could with the information.
And I think that before you approve the lease, you should convert that to not a per acre amount, but a dollar amount, like the other bids that would be put into.
But this is more or less acres too.
Right, so
That ain't the exact amount of acres, 10.37.
My understanding is the 10.37 is what John calculated using GIS coordinates
Okay,
a couple years ago when we took it out of a county lease.
and up there they have the acres is different. Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
So it's, I think you need to go with probably SCS's number.
Number,
Because they're
yeah.
the ones who are going to calculate the payment of the.
Yep. Yeah,
CRP.
it's-
You go with.
Yeah,
That is exactly why mine was, because when I.
you were up there, yeah.
Well, I haven't been up there, but
Okay.
you shared the last.
Yeah, there's a,
That you got
it's
is 12.
more or less, yeah,
Since mine will be tied to CRP, I would have to be in alignment with.
With
whatever-
their acres, yeah.
That's why it was different.
Jim had a question.
I think, Jim, you could ask the other people that bid, who know, they know who they are, if there's any objection to what, Jody's proposing.
Well, I'm just,
Why?
I'm just looking at the number that we have to take off Jody's bid, which, if I'm correct, is $360 an acre.
Yeah.
I think that's what Mark came up with.
Okay.
I mean, that is the maximum.
That she was gonna bid.
Is the maximum 360 or is the maximum, is that the addition $10 more than the highest bid here?
Well, that's like having two bids there.
No, the second part says $10 higher per acre than the highest bid submitted, up to a maximum of 360. Do we necessarily arrive at the 360 or is it $10 more than the highest bid? I'm confused.
$10 more than the highest bid.
And what's the highest bid here?
330.
Be roughly 320 an acre.
So would hers be 330 an acre?
Yeah,
then?
hers
Oh,
would be 330.
okay.
Yeah.
So just so everyone's on the same page, are we looking at Jody's at 330 an acre times 12 points?
Whatever the government office comes
Okay,
up
so it'd
with.
be 10 point. They have a 10
Pretty
point
sure
seven.
it's 12.01.
No, okay,
We
whatever
have
that,
a 10.
whatever the 10-year program,
They
a lot is what the acres are.
For the sake of your analysis, then should we use the 12.01 at 330?
30.
And that, you're comfortable with that number, Andy?
And now that we've identified at least one of the bidders, you may as well, Jack, I think, Jim's idea of finding out if there's any objection to it is now's the time to learn that.
I guess,
They're not here.
yeah, but
And I'm sure that the way that I wrote this did not preclude any other bidder from a similar structure. I mean, I considered that equitable, and so did the attorney that I was working with. So those options were open.
Are the other bidders in the room? Because I don't know who they are.
I am one,
one of them.
and, I have no problem for taking her proposed. Yeah, that's fine.
And the other bidder's not here.
No, and that's, I know who the gentleman is. That's all he
Is
was,
that the lower one? Then?
the lowest one, yeah.
So I think Jody's.
If I'm okay with what, because it complies with the 10-year program, she's got to comply with that and whatever.
I think that,
I see,
I think this particular situation fits in well with conserving soil, hedging against a good price locked in for duration.
That's one big advantage for you as the board is that you don't have to go through this now again for 11 years. So
yes, yeah.
so I'll probably be the, only one of us that's still
Yeah.
sitting at the table.
Hey,
I mean,
You guys will be enjoying your retirement at that point.
I think it's this.
Well, we got to close the public hearing.
Yeah,
I move to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
We have a motion second to close the public hearing. All those in favor, say aye.
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 I'd make a motion to approve the bid for Jody Berlage at $330 an acre.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the bid for the farm lease at $330 per acre. Is there any further discussion?
And I want to make sure we're going to use
The
whatever the,
government CRP,
whatever the
acres.
FSA says the acres are. Do you want to include that in that
yes,
bid amount?
whatever the CRP
330
acres are.
acre. At, the FSA office certified acre amount. And he made the
Motion.
Yes.
second was.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We'll get that information into the lease form, get it up to Ben, and you guys can get that signed.
And you'll have, either Mark or you maybe can find out from FSA what that exact acre acre number is.
I'll get it for you.
Well, if it's 12.01 or whatever, and then the lease will actually say the dollar amount. So we don't.
There, Steve is on now.
I voted
We don't
yes.
have-
I couldn't get past the mute.
Yeah, we couldn't either. Sorry about that.
Next on the agenda, Andy Vandermountain, County Attorney, discuss and act possibly on county engineer replacement process.
First question I have for you is, did you address the issue in the resignation letter as to whether you're accepting a 2-week notice or a June 30 date?
No, we have not yet.
And I think that's certainly an issue that needs to be addressed today. So the second item, we will need to appoint an interim engineer with an effective date of Lee's retirement or resignation, excuse me. Retirement's a little too optimistic there. So you'll need to appoint the interim for picking up on the start date after Lee leaves, whichever date that happens to be. And then there are some criteria that your replacement at the engineer will have to meet. And I have a list here. I think that in this circumstance, given the nature of the position that you're filling, rather than using a subcommittee of the board, it would be appropriate for the full board to discuss and get your ad out. You know, all of you are going to need to interview regardless. All of you are going to need to review the applicants, the applications. We have done this in other positions where we've had two people kind of identify the front runners and bring them in. I would not recommend that for the engineer's position because of the wide range of responsibilities that this individual has. The items that you're going to want, well, that all 5 of you may look at differently in terms of criteria for who's a front runner and who isn't. And quite frankly, I don't think that having a committee appointed is going to facilitate or speed up the process. I think that you're going to end up putting out ads in the same mediums that you would use, the professional organizations, the state. The other thing that you will have is DOT will be sending you information and certain requirements and timelines that they will expect you to follow to keep this process moving. If you don't happen to meet those deadlines, they will start threatening to not allow you to proceed with project letting and that type of thing. So there's a fair amount of things to do, and I think it's the responsibility of the board as a whole to address that.
Any comment?
Sure.
So I just want to make sure, point out that you've done it both ways. The only time I remember the full board being a participant was when they were appointing the sheriff, when there was a vacancy midterm. Usually it's the committee process, but like Andy said, this is a higher level position. If you're doing the full board, I want to make sure if applications are not public records at that point, even though they're being shared amongst the full board, or are they? So that's the first one I want to make sure is clarified. And the second one, when you're doing an interview, from my experience, when they did the sheriff, you would publicize it, post it as an open meeting. The applicant could come in, and if the applicant that you're interviewing requests that be closed, at that point, it could be closed. If they don't request it, that interview then would be an open meeting. I think it's the way I understand that.
What about using an outside hiring consultant for this, similar to what the Decorah Police Department is doing?
That's certainly an option. I don't know I don't know what's out there for availability of consultants for this. I know with civil service type, positions, including law enforcement, those are more readily available. I don't know if there is here. The other distinction, I think, is that you have the DOT information that you'll be receiving also, which consultant would probably duplicate that in some respects. But that is, I mean, it's an option.
I'd like to see assistance from the DOT, maybe even in person if they have that option. I mean, our qualifications to be supervisors is that we're 18 years old and live in our district. I'd like additional expertise on a hiring process in some way for this type of position.
That's a conversation we can have.
I think your first question is, how long do you want?
Yes,
Every request.
because if we want to retain Lee for up to the 60 days, he needs a
Written.
written letter from the board.
And then if it's shorter, you need to find out, or at whatever point, you need to find out if Isaac is willing to be your temporary, or if you're gonna try to find someone else to be your temporary, because this process is obviously gonna take several weeks.
Months.
Yeah,
Current assistants, are they qualified to be the chemistry engineer?
Yeah.
You said
Isaac is,
Yeah.
one of them is.
I think,
Isaac has his EE.
right, I think he's taken the NHI course for bridge inspection, I believe. Might want to double check that with him. So he would, I think he would hit most of the items for the.
So- Right now, if we take Lee a 2 weeks notice, we're already a week into it, so
Yes.
he's done.
he's done it Friday, so you need to act today.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we need to keep him longer than that to make sure everything's in place probably, but how long do we want to go with that?
Yeah, or you need to
How
know,
long do we want to go with temporary engineer? I don't know that we're gonna, by the time you get something decided, advertised, you're looking 2 months out. Probably just to get somebody in place,
At
so
least.
which means I think we need to keep.
I think one of your first question is, and this is related to that, is if you don't want to ask Lee to stay any longer, do you know today that if Isaac is willing to be the temporary? So I think you need at least 1 week of additional time to find that out before you can even let it take action.
Well, I'm gonna agree with Ben on that and Mark. I mean, with all the DOT requirements and everything else that falls into play with Lee and the kind of unexpected. I mean, I didn't see it coming. I don't know if anyone else did. And kind of puts us in a jam here. And if Lee is willing to stick on for a while, I think we should embrace that. And how many days? I don't know.
I guess I would say, obviously there's a lot of projects going on right now that need to make sure we're following and filing paperwork and whatever. I would keep him on for what he offered is 2 months, 60 days, which will buy us probably about enough time to at least have an idea that we're gonna be able to get somebody hired that's qualified. I'm not saying that Isaac wouldn't be, but that's obviously they're operating under a temporary thing, and by the time you knowing what, or been through this before with other places, I mean, it takes a long time to get the ad out, do the search, and to get somebody who's gonna quit
I'd say
their
we're gonna
job,
do something, I'd say
quit their job and move.
30 days, because we'll be done with the 175th by then. There ain't a whole lot more going on after that.
Steve, do you have any comment?
Unmuted.
Well,
Just a minute.
get you unmuted.
So I muted him for car noise, but I think he has to unmute himself because I can't hear. Steve, can you unmute yourself on your phone? There you go. Now we hear you.
I'm unmuted. If we need 30 days and contacting Isaac. Isaac is a qualified registered professional engineer. I think we need to pursue quickly and see what his answer is. I think he does an excellent job and has done a lot for us, and we need to acknowledge that. If Lee is willing to stay on for 30 days while we go through a lot of the DOT work, then I understand that would be fine. That depends on whether or not he's willing to do so.
Shirley, do you have any input?
My desire would be to keep Lee through June 30th as offered. He's got a lot of knowledge there, and I know Isaac would appreciate.
What do you think? What's more?
What? I would be in favor of keeping Lee till June 30th if he's willing to do that as stated in this resignation letter. I think that would serve our county very well.
That would be my, also knowing how slowly hiring goes and the amount of work that's gonna get transferred to somebody else.
All right.
That leaves it to you.
Yeah. We have 230s and 260s. It is gonna take a fair amount of time, and with the unknown with whether Isaac wants to step up and take that spot. Do we all agree on 45 days?
I think we should just go with
I'm
60
It's in
and
the budget.
do this right for the community and the county. This is a really big decision with
Given,
a lot of
because
ramifications.
given listening to different people talk about the shortage of people that are available to take positions,
And I
it's gonna
agree.
take a while.
I agree that Isaac is, he has.
There is a lot of chatter and a lot of activity out there on the streets of people that are very interested in the position is what I've been hearing in various city council meetings and so forth. Even all the
What
way
did
up to
you
the
say?
Minnesota. I said there's been a lot of interest in this open position in Winneshiek County from what I've heard from other engineers and city council meetings that I attend. So I think there's more interest in us than we may recognize.
Oh, I don't
Yeah.
doubt there's interest in this position. It's a great position. My concern is what's best for the county. We've got to do our due diligence here with this opening. And the time between now and the time we could get somebody hired. I think it would serve us very well to keep Lee until June 30th.
Did his letter specifically say June 30th? Because it looks like.
It said up to 60.
Up to
I think that is on the 23rd, just looking at the calendar.
Okay. Then June 23rd.
Because if 2 weeks is this Friday and an additional, now, 6 weeks would be the 20. 6 would be the 23rd, but 6 weeks is only additional 42 days, and does it count the holiday?
I'm
Six
saying-
weeks would be June 23rd after his.
After the first
After
2
his
weeks,
last day.
yeah.
And I picked because it's our last day.
So
of our
that's
fiscal
roughly
year.
the 45 days. So,
So if you go 45 days from the original date, that's different than,
yeah,
yeah, you need to talk about what you're doing. I think you should say we should ask him to
June.
stay until
June,
such and such a date.
June 23rd.
Okay.
That would be my,
And that would be 60 days from the original date.
Yeah.
Or
Or
can make a motion.
late, yeah.
I would motion that we go with the 60 days from his original.
June, I would, well,
Is that
June 23rd.
Just say what date.
June 23rd.
Yeah. I would second it.
We have a motion and second to send Lee a letter asking him to retain his job until June 23rd. Is there any further discussion? If
And is
not,
Andy writing this letter? Is that part of the request? I wanna know who's writing it.
I didn't make the motion.
I can, I'll draft something up, send it to you for Dan's signature.
Okay, sounds good.
Is there any other further discussion? If none, all those in favor say aye.
I-
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign, motion carries. Unanimous.
So I think several of those other details then is including asking Isaac is not nearly as pressing. That we can work through that over the next week or two about how we're gonna make sure Isaac's ready and how we're gonna get this
Well,
started.
it gives him a little time to breathe too and decide.
Yeah.
Okay, no, man. So,
Yeah.
All right, anything else? I need to attend a meeting, I didn't
Yep.
so
On that.
we're good.
Good.
I can work with you on.
That's actually.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ethan.
all right, next on the agenda, Egan, NEICA, Northeast Iowa Community Action Corps, Transportation Director.
Steve, I'm gonna mute you again, only because the car noise is kind of loud in here, but when you need to get back in, unmute yourself, please. Thanks, Steve.
Sorry for the long wait.
That's okay, that's okay. We got business to do. Shirley, do you want?
Yeah, I'm gonna move for you. Just a second.
Do you have
Go ahead.
ability to do that?
Yes.
Thank you, Chris.
I'm just gonna leave you my space here. You can sit here for your presentation. Nope, it's easier for you because then you can run the computer where you want to. There you go.
Yikes.
This was an extra copy she handed out.
Actually, it wasn't 60 days for minute one. It's May 1 when submitted it.
It's done.
Okay.
Counting 8 weeks from 6 additional weeks this Friday, which makes 2 weeks without.
Go ahead. And they're probably September.
Good morning. Thank you for the time this morning, and the ability to provide you this information about what we do for public transportation at Northeast Iowa Community Action. As you can see, our mission and vision, Northeast Iowa Community Action has been in business for many years, and we advocate for the advancement of community development and improve social and economic conditions for individuals and families with limited resources. So that's who we are and what we do. What the story is, as you all know, on a national level, nearly 40 million people are still living in poverty, and even more are just one missed paycheck away from hardship. We believe everyone should be able to take care of their families and have an equal opportunity for success. At Community Action, agencies serve 99% of all American counties with life-changing services to help families achieve stability. We provide services for 7 counties in Northeast Iowa as an agency, but our public transportation system provides public transportation services for 5 of those counties. And those 5 counties are Almaquis, Clayton, Fayette, Howard, and Winneshiek. We promote community development with safe and reliable transportation for the public. All rides are open to the general public, including persons with disabilities. We are not a taxi service. We are a general public transit system. We provide rides for work, appointments, getting groceries, running errands, all of those things that many of us need to do in everyday life to continue the function and work of our lives and our families. CDBG funding, we did apply for this funding. We did not apply. We worked with Howard County. And we applied and they applied for the funding, which we then provided the services for a program, which we transported individuals from Almaquis County with a stop in Winneshiek County and a stop in Howard County, and then to the Upper Iowa beef plant in
Lime Springs.
Lime Springs. There we go. Our service miles for the time frame that we provided that service, we started providing the service in May of 21, and that just ended in January of 23. Our service miles for that project were 82,111. Our service hours were 2,270, and the revenue that we generated from that service was $84,000. Rider, we provide scheduled trips for 330 trips every single day. That's Monday through Friday. Service miles in calendar year 22 was 564,500 new riders in our system. Our revenue hours were 32,134, and revenue hours is different than service hours, general service hours, or system hours, in that revenue hour is determined by the time that a person is actually on the vehicle. So that's how those hours are determined. Our average miles per trip was 10, and the number of trips per hour that we do is 2.04. Current cost per mile is $3.35. And I don't know if you know that our current rate for in-town services is $2 per trip. And for rural or out-of-town services, that is $2 per mile. And our rates are one of the lowest rates in the whole state. We did a pilot. We've been doing a pilot for the last 3 months since the UIB, or our commuter route, ended in Decorah, because that freed up some drivers that we had. And so we've been doing a pilot and adjusted some of our routes in Decorah. What we found is that we don't need as many drivers, so we are going to be making some additional changes to that route, and especially with the changes that happen seasonally with the end of the school year. We don't need as many drivers during the summer, but we also have drivers who want to take vacations and all those nice things to get that nice work-life balance.
You mentioned the school year. I know that when we used to have kids in daycare, that they would stop at our daycare place.
Yeah.
To take kids to and from school too. So
That's
it
great.
isn't just adults, it's
Right.
children.
And children too. And we primarily see the service used in Cresco and Decorah for school children to get transported to school. We continue to evaluate the need to extend in-town services in Decorah, Cresco, and Owine, because those are our larger cities. And so that is something that we are considering to take a look at in the future. Van pools, this is something that's been around for some time, but recently on the state level, the regional transit systems can now access vans for van pool service. And we are going to start surveying larger employers in the region to determine the need for this, if they feel that it would be a benefit to them to have access to some type of van pool service to get their employees to work on a regular basis. Low and no emission vehicles is a hot topic of conversation. As we look at public transit across the nation, the federal funding dollars, which we do receive those dollars for capital replacement and capital projects, are vehicles. The push is to replace our vehicle fleet, with lower no emission vehicles. The issue that we have for our organization and our public transit system is that we don't currently have the infrastructure in place to make that jump to low or no emission vehicles at this point. It is going to take us some time to be able to do that. But I have heard from organizations on the federal level that believe that the federal dollars are going to continue to be focused on low and no emission vehicles for vehicle replacements. Rural communities have been very verbal on the federal level to let the FTA know that although, yes, going to clean energy vehicles would be beneficial, it is very difficult to apply a urban plan to rural areas, it's gonna take us a lot more time to be able to implement that infrastructure than it may take on the urban area, on the urban side. So
We had to spend almost $100,000 on an electrical upgrade at the Smith Building just to be able to run the air conditioners down there. So there would be some, that building is not have a really good electrical service. So there will be some major changes needed to
right,
facilitate that if you're charging at that building.
right. And that's, you know, that's the part of the conversation with the counties, because we do have station, what we refer to as station points, or where we park our vehicles in every county. So it would be great if we could start having conversations, excuse me, about how we could work better with the counties to see if there's space available, not only for electric vehicles, but potentially for our current combustion-based vehicles to store those in, because all of our vehicles are parked out in the elements. But as I said, that's a conversation to start and to have, you know, going forward, because we know that to spending extra dollars on much that the wants as opposed to the needs. Our capital projects, replacing vehicles, the low emission and no emission vehicles falls into that, but currently we are working on replacing our combustion-based vehicles. And we are all, I'm sure, very aware of supply chain issues, and we continue to see those in the public transit and the type of vehicles that we have to get. I ordered 6 new vehicles February of 20. Fall, winter, or next spring. So it's, you know, we're doing everything we can to keep our current vehicles running and in place, but the majority of the vehicle stock for all public transits across the state of Iowa is we run those vehicles until they can't be run anymore. I mean, I've got a vehicle that's from 2009 that I've still got on the road. So we really do get everything that we can out of those vehicles, with still maintaining the safety and the reliability of the vehicles. So.
Is West Union your main shop?
Yes, West Union is our main shop, and that building is 100 years old and will need some major renovation should we continue to move forward with our plan to go to clean energy vehicles.
How many miles would a 2009 vehicle have on it?
Over 250,000. Transit funding 101, just to give you the basics of where the money comes from. Where federal funding is $5311. It provides operation funding to provide demand response or what is also called dial-a-ride services. Our federal funding 5339 provides funding for capital purchases and facilities. So those are grants that would be writing for grants for facility replacement. And you know, we all know with federal dollars there are a number of steps and stages that you have to go through to be able to access those funds. So state funding provides funding for operations as well. State funding is that funding is formula based, and it depends on the funding comes from sales tax on new vehicle sales. So that's where those dollars come from. Contracts with MCOs, transportation brokers, which is the NEMT is non-emergency medical transportation. We have contracts with community-based providers, the DAHABs, Spectrum, Task, RISE, those organizations, and school districts as well, who do not want to put money into purchasing necessarily wheelchair accessible vehicles. They find that it's more fiscally sound to contract with us to provide transportation for those students. General fare box is the charge for and that's a portion of the funding that we receive, the income revenue. Demand response, what that means. Trips are provided for customers needing in-town and out-of-town services. Out-of-town services need to be requested 48 to 72 hours in advance in order to schedule a driver. And as I said, we provide non-emergency medical transportation, which is all those doctor appointment visits that people are wanting to schedule trips for, so. And that is the basis of public transit at Northeast Iowa Community Action. Any questions?
Just, you said the in-town service is $2.
Yes, per trip,
Per trip,
yes.
like.
So it's $4 round trip. Yeah.
And then if they're going to Rochester for an appointment or something, it's $2
Per mile.
How much of it is like just guessing ballpark percentage, how much of your trips stay in your 5-county area and how many actually go to Rochester, Iowa City for a hospital or something?
I would say 90% of the trips that we do, well, maybe it's 80%. 80% of the trips that we do every day are in-town service.
A lot of your non-emergency medical transports would be somebody who doesn't drive or something that needs to go to the hospital like regularly for
Dialysis,
or something like
Yeah.
that, where they just.
essential services. Yep, yep. That is exactly it.
You have a maximum on the distance you guys travel?
Well, I do know that I have been told that previously we had provided trips to Chicago.
Okay.
I would probably have a hard time, justifying that at this point in time, but, you know,
With the $2 per mile, is that round both ways or? just
Yes.
one way?
yeah. Yep.
$4 a mile.
Mhm.
So a Rochester run would be roughly $300 on those.
But people, you know, forget that it's
No, that's.
salaries, it's staff,
Oh, yeah.
it's insurance, it's vehicle repairs.
You
I mean,
can't run there.
Okay,
And if you're, especially you're talking Chicago, but even Rochester, if the person has to be there for several hours. If it's a 3-hour appointment, do you pay your driver then to sit there and wait?
We do.
Because it's not worth.
it's
coming
not
home
worth
and
the
coming
debt
back.
head, yeah, and that's what we really try and keep a eye on, is that those deadhead miles, because those are not doing us any good, so we want to make every trip worth our while. And so it gets to
That's
be,
why you try to, you're 80% or more, maybe up as 90 within the 5-county, because while that person's at their appointment, you can go get someone else and take
Absolutely.
them and then go back to get them and take
Absolutely.
them home, so.
your public transit systems, if you think of it, if you've ever used bus services in cities, the more people you can get on that vehicle, the more efficiently you're running that system. Our system is no different than that.
So
It's just that we're in the rural.
if people were going to Rochester and there were 5 of them, they still just get totally charged
They each get charged
they each get charged.
for that individual service. Unless they do a group trip and somebody else is paying for it, and that's charter, and we are frowned upon from providing charter services, federal regs.
Doesn't fair cover some of that transportation for individuals.
Medicaid,
Medicaid.
we only contract with Medicaid. We don't contract with Medicare or other private insurances at this point.
So then, like you said before, at one of the previous meetings we had, that the low emission electric buses or vans would be hard to go to Rochester with, because by the time you get there or any further, you're gonna run out of, and you can't make the round trip.
Right, because they have a limited like 300 mile
Large charge, yeah.
But they could charge what we're waiting for the patient. too.
Yeah, yes, if that infrastructure and that's available.
But you're in town,
Yes,
you probably run all day in there.
yes,
That's where the rural and urban is.
Yep.
Having a
that
conflict.
difference.
And the mileage decreases when you're running a heater in
Yeah,
the wintertime.
and how many got on the bus?
Mhm.
Yeah, it
So
all-
I mean, it's, yeah.
All those factors to consider.
yeah.
Don't be more charging stations then to the future.
Yes, yes. You know, this is just looking at a 5-year, 10-year, 15, you know, we all have to plan for the future, so. Hopefully plan to be able to meet those needs. and run our system as most efficiently and effectively as we can.
Your help situation, and then
When the pandemic started, we had 48 drivers. I think we are down to 29 currently. So we,
There were times during then where you were quite a bit even more, you were having trouble getting new people.
right. Yeah. So, but we're hopeful that's gonna continue to turn around. It's a national issue. They're having trouble everywhere hiring transit drivers, so.
I'm on the Northeast Iowa Community Action Board. And I just want to put a plug in for the work they do for this community. I think a lot of people in our community have no idea what all of the services offered there. They do take charitable contributions. I'll just put that plug in now. So if you have any you'd like to make, they would greatly appreciative of that extra money.
And the counties all that you serve all contribute to help.
Yes,
offset
absolutely,
their
absolutely.
costs.
And we appreciate every dollar we
And
get
the good
from
thing of-
every source.
And the good thing about the county funds or charitable contributions, they don't come with nearly as many strings attached as some of your other funding. So you can
Absolutely
get some of those things that you need that
Yes.
they won't cover.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And in
Thank
fact,
you.
I'm available anytime you have questions, concerns, please feel free to contact me.
Okay, thank you for the update.
Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you.
Did you have, was that a copy of your slide there, Lori?
Um,
Do you have a copy there of your slides?
I do.
Some of the people online may share and watch.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next,
This
up,
is Tricia, in case you didn't know,
Yeah.
she's the director, of community action, so.
Down at the old hospital.
Yeah. I didn't. Lori didn't see it all. Thank you.
Thank
you.
Okay.
next on the agenda, Kevin Lee. Recommendations and expectations regarding board of supervisors.
Good morning supervisors. I just, thought it might be necessary to appreciate being granted the time to share some non-partisan observations with you today. Excuse me, I got a little bit of a cold. After the great controversy surrounding the passing of the fiscal budget, in my opinion, we need a fine detail of each request for finances from the county. When I was chair of the Winneshiek County Pioneer Cemetery Commission, Supervisor Dean Darling was our liaison. He would attend the commission during the budget request time actually took the request to the supervisors. The commission had to have a fine line item of each expenditure and explain exactly the use of any carryover from one year to the next. Any funds not used could be forfeited. Budget requests should be posted to the county website for review by the public. Guidelines for the request should be established so every entity has the same requirements and disclosure of funding. The request should have explanations that are clear and all assets disclosed. In the past, it was expected that representatives of all entities requesting funding from the budget attend the public hearing in case there was a question. This should be a common courtesy. The supervisors need to reveal how they came to decisions on the budget. Dollar numbers, constituent input, and cost progression of major programs needs to be presented by the supervisors and not the auditor. If cuts are needed, a factual breakdown of the reasons needed to be discussed with the whole board and not contrived without the other supervisors knowing. This is very important to both parties. It is an obstruction of good government to do otherwise. The supervisor should be elected as a nonpartisan position. Supervisors should be required to attend training in county government and conflict resolution. In my opinion, Floyd Ashbecker was a wonderful supervisor in this requirement as he was a former sheriff. And he also was highly involved in the Iowa State Association of County Supervisors. Each supervisor should at a minimum be a certified county supervisor. The requirement will give the elected supervisor insight into local government that is essential and also keep them abreast of legislation and other issues concerning the local government. There are other instructive sessions that can benefit supervisors at hand so conflict can be decelerated, especially with the public. I am quite certain that Robert's Rules of Order is included in the actuation of the supervisor meeting. Supervisors should be trained at least minimally how to use them. The chair should be well versed on these rules and how to use them fairly. Being a supervisor is a complex job. If a person is considering running for the position, one should attend at a minimum 1 year of supervisors meetings to be able to realize a year cycle of events that are part of the job. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions, just fire away.
I will comment that the budget requests were posted on the website about 3 weeks before the public hearing for the budget. So when they published the required public notice in the newspaper, I posted the requests along with some other additional information on the website.
Good.
At the most recent ISAC conference, you write on the second paragraph that budget requests should be posted to the county. That, but also those smaller requests we get like from the county fair and all of those additional ones, they suggested at ISAC and that we do that for liability reasons and follow up to make sure that the county taxpayer dollars were used for what they say they were going to be used for. And we don't necessarily have contracts with each of those people that request money to the county, and ISAC suggested we get those in contracts and in writing with them with parameters that they're going to meet with that money that we give them. So you're right.
That's real comprehensive. Yeah.
And
That one of the work
there has been some changes in interpretation of the rules. The rules themselves haven't changed because the rule has been reinterpreted as actually in the state constitution. So it's been around for a long time, but it's been changed. Interpretation has been changed in the last 5 years that restricts who we can give money to. So
that was another conversation though, Ben.
yeah.
And that was an interesting conversation because the people in that state auditor's office actually said, for instance, we probably could have given to Vesterheim for their matching gifts. That was a specific question asked in that session. So it's really interesting how different people are interpreting it right now.
And mostly the way that it's understood that, and she referenced the contracts, if it's a nonprofit, there has to be a contract in place. If it's another government entity, then there doesn't have to be a nonprofit because they're then subject to all the same public entity auditing that anyone else that we are. So
The key term is public purpose.
Yeah.
Each of those requesters has to prove there's a public purpose to the money they're asking for,
So
which includes tourism.
what I was hearing from Ben was that there's an auditing process for any government entity.
yeah. So for example, your Pioneer Cemetery example, they are audited as part of our county audit because they're part of the public entity.
That's
If it's the fair, I mean, they're a public entity too. I don't know their process because they're not covered as part of ours. And I'm assuming they have a public auditing process, but I don't know what it is.
Sure. Well, it just clarifies a lot, and maybe there'd be less conflict if everyone was abreast of what the fine details are instead of getting into a
It was a big change because we used to have several nonprofits that would request funding, and then without contracts in place, we were further restricted. And so we did put several contracts in place to continue funding them, but
Is there, I was gleaning on the web about vendors and the use of vendors in government agencies. Is there any controls that any of you might know? If it's a fair and balanced process of selecting a vendor to do work for a government agency like a commission?
there are rules when the dollar amounts exceed certain levels. So, what those dollar amounts are vary depending on what kind of project it is. A road project is different than a building project, which is different than other contracted projects. But I would guess most of the smaller projects are up to the department head or the chair of the commission or whoever to make sure that they're using a fair and reasonable process. And in some respects, I mean, even, the general supplies for the county, we try to buy in bulk amounts to save everybody money. But when a department wants a supply, they can't always just buy the cheapest one because the vendor has to be able to provide us the sales tax exemption and payment method that's approved and so on. So, which sometimes gets difficult and sometimes creates kind of a hassle at our end, because if someone says, hey, I found this cheaper. I mean, a good example is public health found something during the pandemic that was cheaper, but it was in Australia. And so there was quite a rigmarole for us to get. To make sure it was appropriate and approved. And we did get it figured out, but it saved them several thousand to be able to do that, but it was still. So there's a process to be able to do some of those things. We try to discourage departments from just searching the web and finding the lowest price they can and trying to buy something, because there have been a couple of times where it wasn't what they expected when we got it, and it's really hard to follow up on something like that. So if we have established vendors, even if they're a little more expensive, it's sometimes easier to use them in our place. Yes. And just setting up the sales tax exemption process isn't always easy for some vendors, because that's part of their automated process to add tax. And our exemption tax, we actually got that in our last audit, is that they found one where one of the departments had paid for something and paid tax because it was easier. They ordered it online, and then we were dinged for that. So Tony in my office has now gotten another duty to very closely monitor that, because they can't pay the sales tax.
And he does ask questions.
Yes.
Just wondering too, technically, the supervisors are a partisan election. Right?
They are, that's by state code.
By code. So in order to change that, you'd have to pursue the government, like downstate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there have been bills, just about every legislative session, someone brings that up. And sometimes it's more for the other five of us, the attorney, the sheriff, auditor, recorder, treasurer, because we're not policy setting elected officials. We don't make any rules or laws. We just follow ones that are in place. Why are we partisan?
Right.
And so that one usually gets more traction, but it doesn't get through. And including the board or not is yet another step, because they are actually policy setting. They can make laws for the county and so that one sometimes gets even less traction, because there are people who enjoy their party. Luckily, we don't have that here as much as in some of the bigger counties, the elected officials, even the county auditor, and I know of at least one who is very active in his party and likes to use his position to help get the word out. So
Sure. Well, I think you've answered quite a few questions for me. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Next on the agenda, Shirley Vermace, public thank you to Winneshiek County employees.
Great, thank you. I just wanted, there's just been so much turmoil and resignations. I don't want them to leave their positions without a public acknowledgement of that. So that's why I'm on the agenda. First, I'd like to again thank Corey Meyer for his passion, expertise, and commitment to Winneshiek County's right-of-ways. Corey put his heart and soul into his position of roadside manager. He's secured over $250,000 in grants for the program. He put Winneshiek County into a position of a model roadside program, a program other counties look to for guidance and knowledge. Corey, Winneshiek County owes you a huge thank you for your work. And continue in the direction you had started, and continue to save costs for this county by spot spraying, reducing mowing, and investing in the county's long-term cost savings with the roadside program. Thank you, Corey Meyer. And now, thank you to Lee Bierke. Lee Bierke joined Winneshiek County as an assistant county engineer serving under George Hanslick in 1994 and became the head engineer in 2000. For the last 23 years as our engineer, Lee Bierke has brought to Winneshiek County and partnerships at the state of Iowa level that have served not only our county, but all counties in the state of Iowa. When we look back on the history of Winneshiek County, we find that George Hanslick shared a deep understanding of the county's road and bridge system with Lee during that base of knowledge, and is now one of the leading county engineers in our state, if not our region, held in high esteem by his peers around the state. It should come as no surprise that the Iowa DOT acted very quickly in securing Lee in their ranks. They knew his worth and his expertise. Every one of our county employees, from the longest serving employee to our newest recruit in the IT department, has contributed to Winneshiek County's success, but this thank you is dedicated to Lee Bierke specifically. Lee has steered the county through times of great change from the early days of serving as an engineer assistant to George Hanslick in the 1990s. He was appointed head engineer in 2000. Over the following 23 years, he would oversee and partner on many defining moments and major developments in this county, including the Pole Line Bridge, Jewel Bridge, Spillville Bridge, Bluffton Bridge, the bike trail and grants to establish it, the roadside vegetation management program, the Spillville Bridge, and so many more. He worked, let's also look at the drawdown structures for flood mitigation he was part of in planning and moving forward. He worked tirelessly for this county during the flooding events, including 2008, 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Lee also served in leadership with the Iowa County Engineers Association and the National Association of County Engineers, and was on many forums in the engineer meetings at the Iowa Association of Counties Conference, the ISAC conferences in Des Moines. Lee has been firm, fair, and consistent. You knew where you stood with him, and if you got a telling off, you must most likely deserved it. And once said it was over and done with, he moved on from that. He was a good listener and delegator. It was as if he followed the maxim, the best way to keep power is to share it, and the best way to influence is to listen. Lee just seemed to concentrate on getting the basics right, getting the job done well and within the legal parameters, and stretching our secondary roads budget as far as he could, always keeping our taxpayers' safety in mind and the employees' safety. He worked to be sure we not only covered the county's needs, but also to help various cities with our county, including Jackson Junction, Spillville, Calmer, Fort Atkinson, and others. We didn't have to do that, but Lee pushed for that for those smaller communities. I guess that using your talents and leaving a legacy is something we all desire to do, and Lee has succeeded in doing this. And yet he was almost self-effacing and seeking recognition for his achievements. I asked him to be here for this thank you today, and he said, no, I'm not in this for thank yous. I'm in this because this is what I love to do. One of the nice things I have heard said about Lee is that he is essentially the same person who joined Winneshiek County all those years ago. Winneshiek County is a better place to be because of Lee's efforts. Let's hope we can all say that when our time comes. My final tribute is to say that such is the strength of the foundation that he has laid that I believe we can all face the future with hope, that under a new engineer's leadership, Lee's impact in this county can continue. Lee, the Iowa DOT is lucky enough to now have your stellar participation and work ethic. You've always held your oath as a professional engineer at the forefront. Enjoy your future with the Iowa DOT. Lee, thank you for your wonderful 28-year career with Winneshiek County and best wishes for the next phase. It's been our pleasure to know you and to work with you. I debated whether or not to read this part of my thanks or not. I'm an elected official and I have nothing to lose. But I am a voice, and when I ran, I said I would be a voice. So I'm going to choose to read this part too. And this is to my fellow supervisors. A sincere apology from you to these employees and to their wider community is in order. An apology for your arbitrary actions of the last several weeks, your micromanagement of the secondary roads department, your unsubstantiated attack on the roadside program manager and plan, your statements of misinformation and untruths to local media in our open meetings too, and more.
I don't believe
It
this
is
has
my
anything
hope-
to do with the public.
It is my hope that from this day forward, this board will serve.
I'm not gonna sit here and get blasted
Based
You're
on
on
facts and data.
for a public thank you. Stop.
You stop. It is my hope this board will trust in the great work we all benefit through the great employees of Winneshiek County. We're lucky to have the employees we have. We can lead professionally with facts in our service to this community. We work for all of them. Onward with hope for the future of this beautiful county we all call home, Winneshiek County. Thank you.
I entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
There's a second.
I'll second that.
The motion second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Bye.
That would not happen again.
Shirley.
Some shame.
Did you want to give me that to put into the secretary?
We have it in a digital format, if you'd like.
I can, yeah.
Forget about it. Before we end these.
Yeah. Sounded like you would, I would